So Jesus says that he's the bread that came down out of heaven. Now, you probably have heard this, but this is used by a lot, I have found. A lot of Orthodox people, Catholic, Protestants, Arians, in a very strange way, because, again, so we're looking at the literal way of reading something versus an idealized way of looking at things. But the thing that strikes me about this, when they use it, they, as in the Orthodox view or the Arian view, is that they're basically saying that Jesus existed in the flesh before he took on flesh, because, as we will see, the bread. So Jesus as the heavenly manna or bread. Okay, so first note those verses. So he's the one that got sent. Then those verses there says, and then verse 62, what if you see the Son of Man going up to the place where he was before? Now, if you just see that, you go, well, of course, they're all riled up, they're all murmuring, they're all, there's such outrageous things to say. But we just looked at a whole Jewish perspective that allows for all this sort of language, if you're looking at it in an idealized way. So what do I mean by that? Well, Jesus simply, when he says, I came down out of heaven, he's simply saying that he's the gift from heaven. He's, you can also paraphrase that as, my authority comes from heaven, and so on. The eating and drinking, that obviously comes later with the Lord's Communion. So that's sort of that's not really in the Jewish literature, as far as I know, about the Messiah being eaten and drunk. But it comes later with the, I guess I would put that down to the Lord's Communion revelation. Of course that the Messiah has the power to resurrect. The Messiah is God's agent. And we go back to the first point. He's the sent one. And we'll look at that as the agent language, right? So of course he has been given the power to resurrect. And then he talks about the figure of the Son of Man, well-known figure in Jewish circles, about, again, the person, the human. Remember, Son of Man means a human being. The human, that it's God's appointed human. And again, this is a prophetic, alluding to the prophetic vision of Daniel 7, going up to the place where he was before. Furthermore, the bread can be seen as the heavenly wisdom. So Jesus, when he says, I came down out of heaven, he's the wisdom from God, right? There's a very interesting passage here in the wisdom of Ben Sirach, the rabbi. In those chapters 24 and chapter 1, from the mouth of the Most High I came forth. This is wisdom language. So we can compare that to Proverbs 2 and the famous wisdom language of Proverbs 8. So Jesus, the Messiah, is the wisdom from God. Of course, that comes down out of heaven in the idealized way. Come, eat of my bread and drink of the wine I have mixed. This is all said about wisdom, which is interesting, right? In other parts of the New Testament, Paul specifically clearly says that Jesus is the wisdom of God. He's walking wisdom, as it were, just like he's the walking word of God. And you find Proverbs 9:5, and you can compare that to, again, wisdom of Sirach 24. Philo talks about this sort of language. And the other thing I neglected to mention is that if you go to the story of the manna that came down from heaven, it didn't literally, if you read that section there, it didn't literally come out of heaven. It just appeared. it just appeared on the ground, right? And no one saw it coming literally down out of heaven, floating down out of heaven, or falling or floating, whatever you want to. No, it just appeared in the morning, it says, I think. The bread is also parallel to or equal to Torah, by the way. So we get that in Isaiah 55. And then he also has this interesting work, Mekilta, of Rabbi Ishmael. There's a commentary of this rabbi on Exodus 13:17.
Should God not all the more have brought them in by the straight road? But God said, if I bring Israel into the land now, every one of them will immediately take hold of his field or his vineyard and neglect the Torah. But I will make them go round about through the desert 40 years, so that having the manna to eat and water, they will absorb the Torah. On the basis of this interpretation, Rabbi Simon, the son of Yohai, said, only to those who eat manna is it given really to study the Torah.
That's an interesting parallel. You also have the bread equals, guess what? The Logos, or as Plato calls it, the divine Logos. This is from his questions and answers. Philo,
not Plato, yeah.
He has been trained to fix his gaze on the manna, the divine Logos, the heavenly incorruptible good of the soul that loves vision. Seeking what it is that feeds the soul, they discovered it to be the utterance, rhema, compare word logos of God, and the divine logos from which all disciplines and wisdoms flow unfailingly.
So you see there the parallel of logos as something to eat, something to fill you up. Obviously not in a literal sense. You can take this literally, go wild.